Hi, welcome to the fifth part of the agreed supply model and the government intervention lecture of the Introduction to Economics course. Last time we have looked to the deficit, and now actually we will look to how deficit and debt are related to each other. And you can see the basic logic if you think about it. Um, well, assuming the um, uh, the we are assuming that James has starting with a zero level of wealth level, although he might have taken from his parents or him from his past certain amount of debt or certain amount of surplus money he can use. Note that just like in the case of deficit case, since we are measuring the deficit in general, negative amounts were in this case surplus. In case of deficit, yearly, I mean, surplus for that particular year. And when we look to the debt, negative means basically you have an overall surplus, which basically means that you have actually a positive amount of debt wealth. Otherwise, when you have debt, that is basically a negative amount of wealth. Many millionaires actually might have debt also, and basically they're even if they are when you look their overall the money they have at debt they might be in net debt. The payments they receive and the payments they need to pay might be scheduled in a way so that they can still survive even for years with a negative amount of wealth level. That's possible. You should note that, and that detail is not visible in this chart. But uh, still, of course, I mean, if you increase the debt level to a very large amount, at some point it can be unsustainable, both for individuals and countries. But let's see the connection between debt and deficit. So, assuming James starts with zero level of wealth, in 2001, that's the first year, he got $1,000. In the second year, he has a $500 surplus. That's what negative means. So basically, his debt level falls to 500. In the second year, he has again deficit 200. So his debt increases from 500 to 700. Here we are not assuming that there is an interest or interest payments is reduced is subtracted from the income anyway. I mean that's taken care there. In 2004, he has a $600 of deficit, so that increases his debt to 1,300, and then he has $1,500 surplus. That actually brings his wealth to a positive level. His debt to a negative level in that sense. I mean, they're opposite terms. So he got a $200 worth surplus, and then he has a $400 deficit, which increases her debt level to 200. Now $5,000 of deficit. This creates a huge jump. And then $200 of surplus in 2008, which decreases his debt level to 3,200. However, even though he has a surplus in that year, overall he's still in debt. For example, when we continue in 2011, his deficit in 2012, basically, we see his deficit levels have fallen down. Sometimes we say the deficit is going down, that it's a good thing. But while deficit is going down, still, since you are still negative, even though it's decreasing amounts, your debt is still there and it is still increasing. That is still the case. Well, however, this is telling just part of the story. The other part of the story is told when we are including the income. Your income, what you earn every year, when you consider different sources of income, might basically tell you your ability to pay your debt. if your debt level is much higher than your income level, overall income level, in that case, I mean, you might be not be able to pay your debt by cutting some expenses. Other way around, if your income is your debt level is too low compared with income, well, with some sacrifices, with some austerity at certain point, you might pay your debt. Maybe not immediately, but in 2-3 years, maybe. So, and if we assume the income level of our James, I mean our individual, is increasing by 10% annually. That would be the income level in every year. And then divide the debt of James to the income of James, we see a continuous, we see a different picture. In early years, actually, as you see, you have an increase in debt income ratio, but as the increase in income level becomes dominant, you have a flattening curve, and initially, in the end, actually, it is even decreasing. And that's the basic logic for the countries also. If their production level is increasing, maybe if that increase in production level is high enough, and especially higher than the increase in debt, maybe the country might be still in good shape. I mean, according to one interpretation, it might be in good shape. Of course, the income might also drop abruptly. So in that sense, maybe still independent of income, the debt might also be important. But still, debt to income ratio is telling us also something, that's for sure. Okay. So this is what we are. This is the end of the little math part, and now we can go to the main part of this lecture. So, aggregate demand and aggregate supply model. As we have seen, it is the model that is bringing the whole economy together, and it represents the whole economic system. Now we can start with aggregate demand. It shows the total quantity of goods and services demanded for each particular price level in the economy. Here we are talking on the overall price level. So if price level increases, it's not an increase of an individual price of an individual good or service. It's an overall increase in price level. Inflation, in other words, basically we are talking about inflation if price level in this case increases. Well, AD curve is downward sloped, which means as price level goes down, the aggregate demand, total demand for goods and services in the economic system is increasing. So inflation will reduce the demand. Well, at first it might seem obvious, but first we should note that the reasons that for the negative slope demand in the microeconomics part for individual goods don't work here. Why? Well, why in a typical goods market demand is negatively sloped? First, if a price of the good increases, your income is limited. Well, the amount of, even if you spend the whole income, the maximum amount of goods you can buy will go down. That's the first effect. This effect is not true for the overall economy. Why? Well, if the price of an individual good is high, it gets higher. This will, well, maybe increasing. This may increase the income of the people who are selling that good. That's possible. However, for overall, for the people in general, that won't affect the income of the people in the economic system. That's for sure. But if price of the goods increase, well, just by increasing the price level, basically, well, in hypothetical case, the same amount of goods are sold, the income level of the people will also increase. So basically, increase in price level in general, increase the income level of the people also in the economic system, although the distribution might change, and this distribution effect might be important. This is something we are not seeing in this course, although there's a lot of work done, especially by Keynesians, on how this distribution affects demand. However, in the end, one way or the other, more income will be earned by the people in general, in terms of money, of course. I mean, the buying power of that be the same, assuming there is no growth. So income effect is not existing in case of the aggregate demand. There is another effect in case of the goods market. That's a substitution effect. So if the price of a good increases, in that case, well, you might buy a different good, which has more or less a similar type of effect on you. For example, if the price of coffee gets too high, which happened in Turkey in 1950s, as we have talked before, then people who might substitute for tea, which they did in 1950s. But if in the whole economy prices get too high, well, do people have anything to substitute? They may have. If you have an open economy, in that case, they might substitute for imports. But we already assumed that there was a last part, but we actually have taken that part out because of the coronavirus crisis. We assume that there is no international economic relations between countries. And as a result, well, substitution, you have nothing to substitute it. Overall price level in the economic system is increasing. You have nowhere to go. So these effects are not there. Then which effects are there? There are two major effects that are especially used in your book. I am sticking to your book because there are some effects like the distribution effect, which are also relevant, but not mentioned in the good book. So I don't want to make this lecture more complex, since already there's a lot to cover. So one effect that is mentioned in the book is the wealth factor. So we have mentioned that when prices increases, this doesn't mean necessarily the income of people will decrease, but price effect is an important point. If you keep your money, if you keep your wealth in money form, not many people do, the increase in price level will decrease your wealth. If I have $10,000 and let's say one bread costs $1, I can buy 10,000 bread with my wealth. If the price of bread increases to $10, then I can only buy 1,000 bread with my money. Of course, I can maybe prevent this by investing in foreign money, dollar, euro in Turkey, or gold, or a commodity I know which will have an increase in price, mostly like investing in housing. My parents always tell me, if possible, buy a house because the prices of the houses are always increasing. But for the people, and this is a significant portion of the people who have their money in money form, well, wealth level will decrease. And the fact that you have a smaller wealth level will make the demand of the fact that they have a smaller wealth level compared with prices will make the people's demand fall. Aggregate demand, overall, let's say, willingness to buy goods in the economic system. The second effect is the interest rate effect, and usually, the interest rate is used as key variable in aggregate demand and aggregate supply relation, as well as ISLM relations we have seen in the previous case. But you might focus on AD-AS relation, not ISLM. You should not focus on that. Well, actually, we are coming very close to the 15 minutes mark. So let me tell you the effect of interest rate in the next part. See you in the next part.